Big Z Reviews. Hi, my name's Brandon Zarzyczny, but you can call me Big Z, and today I'm doing a book review for The Blacktongue Thief by Christopher Buehlman. And this is an excellent book that is honestly maybe the best prose I've ever read in a fantasy book. Because, I mean, like, at certain times it's almost, like, too good, because, like, it kind of it broke into my flow of reading at times, because, like, I had to go back and reread a passage because of how good it was. It's like, oh, I gotta read that again. That's really interesting. And it's also incredibly creative. Like, I would consider this to be more in, like, the grimdark subgenre of fantasy. But it's not too dark, but definitely is a little darker than like some of the other fantasies. And for the magic, it's not. I think the magic is a little bit more like Tolkien-esque, where it's kind of mysterious and powerful, and the characters don't really know like too much about, but it plays an important role. And I think this works really well. This is essentially is the main viewpoint character is Kinch Na Shanak, and he is a thief. And it's so funny, but like so many times they have like in other books they have a main character may be a thief or an assassin or like something like a dark job, and then they have to overcome and become a hero and save the world. But like this one, I love his characterization of Kinch because he loves money. He loves gold and silver, and he many times like and parts of the story like in other books usually you'll have someone that'll have to steal something for the mission or something like that. And this one, he'll just randomly go around and cut some purse strings to steal some money, or like if they'll have a big fight. He'll talk about he'll go around searching everyone's pockets, and if he finds any gold or silver, he'll be like, "Ooh, and he'll like taste it and smell it, and like just look at it and talk and go on a diatribe about his favorite coins or the striking of them and which ones he liked more than others." And it's like this guy has a fetish for gold and silver, and it's like I like that. He's like a bit of a kleptomaniac. And I think it makes sense for a thief. And it's also really cool because he's a member of the Takers Guild of Thieves. And essentially they're like huge. They've kind of almost taken over this world, especially after all the wars. Because in this world, essentially, for the past 60 years, they've had 3 huge wars with the Goblins. And the Goblins are very interesting to have the portrayal of them. It's like it's like normal goblin, but he does different things with them, like how they have like little like one finger is like just a claw and is used to grab a hold, and that how they like their magic is all about like poison, and that they love human flesh. Like they have human farms in their caves in their homeland, and that's like and how they're like called biters, and essentially. Like, they say that in the first war, like, all of the humans' armies, they sent, like, half of their best soldiers, and, like, almost all of them died. And then in the second one, they sent, the other half of the soldiers and a bunch of peasants that they trained quickly, and they all died. And in the third war, it's called the Daughters' War, because essentially before 9 out of 10 of every soldier sent to fight the goblins died. So like they're now at this point you're risking human extinction because there aren't that many men left. So in the last war, it's called the Daughters' War. Essentially, some men were drafted, but it's mostly all women that went to war. And this time they also had more magic, and they allowed some darker magic. Maybe from Fulvir that made these were-beasts that combine different beasts, and like one that really helped with this one that is a corvid, they call it. It's like a raven mixed with maybe like an emu or something like that, and then mixed with like a giant. and that's like, so they were able to kind of win, and now they're have like the human world is on the truth with the goblins, and that's where we come in. And since the Kinsh Nasharak, like he, for the last war he was drafted, but instead he kind of fled and was drafted instead by the Thieves Guild. And then now at the beginning of this, he like it's really interesting. It's like it's a little bit of commentary on the our system, America system, of how colleges, like essentially you pay way too much for it, and you get in debt, and then that debt can never be forgiven, and that you're saddled with that for the rest of your life. It keeps you under their heel. And essentially, it's interesting in this though, like they give you a tattoo. Like if once you you're getting a little late on your payments to the guild, like you get an open hand, and that's if you go any bar in the world, if someone sees like your open hand tattoo, if they're the first one to smack you, they get a free drink. And it's just like, and then if you get even later with your payments, you get a fist. And then you get punched, and then you get a rose, and they'll essentially whore you out, or something else, or they'll get rid of you. And but like the idea that they try to teach you some magic, some cantrips. They give you maybe some magical tattoos that you can use, or they teach you how to steal, and then they kind of set you off and you do jobs for them. And at the beginning of the book, Kinch, he is like to get a bit down on his luck. He's fallen back on his payments, so he's working with some bandits. It's not very elegant thievery, but it pays. And essentially, the people that he's with aren't as smart as him, but he's just along with him as an archer. And then he sees this woman completely by herself walking in the woods, and then he's like, guys, we shouldn't go after her. She looks like she looks like trouble. But the bandit leader disagrees, and they attack her. And then she happens to have one of those corvids, which essentially everyone thought everyone got rid of after the war ended. But she pops out, and essentially, along with her short sword, she destroys all the bandits except for Kinch, because he's the only one that made her bleed with one of his arrows. And she is the other main character of the book, Galva. Like, she's not a viewpoint character at all, but like she's kind of the main compatriot to Kinch. And essentially, like, after they have that encounter, the local Thieves Guild kind of tells them, we want you to follow her and go with her on this journey that she's on, and we'll tell you more when you need to know more. And like, they've essentially, Galva is on a mission to try to save a queen of another country that was the princess of her country, Spance, and Espancia. And it's essentially, Galva is like a handmaiden of the goddess of death. And she is like, it's really interesting character. Like, she's very, I like that she's very different, and she's very strong, but she believes that, that when you die, that's the best part of your life, because you're going into the embrace of the goddess of death. And like, she has like, I guess all of the handmaidens, like, these are like the soldiers from the Daughters' War, but the handmaidens of the goddess of death, they like cut off their breasts, essentially, because they're going so that they'll never give milk, they'll only give blood. It's like, and it's just a lot of interesting stuff with her, and they have an interesting relationship, because essentially he has to get around and convince her to let him come along, that he can help her, without also letting her know that maybe their alignments that may not be in sync. The Takers Guild might want him to do something opposite of what she's trying to do. But then they also go around, they also join, they go to this sorceress, Deadlegs. And I love that, and whenever they encounter these magical people, the sorceresses, they're so different. Like, they the setup is like an upside down tower, and the writing of it is really cool. Because like you can kind of picture it, but it's like it messes with your mind, like trying to picture it, but it works really well. And they're the other main part of their party is Norgal Na Galbraith, and she is like a young sorceress, a young witch that's like a protege of Dead Legs, and like she may be a love interest for Kinch because they're both Galtish, or they're both like from Galt, which is like a part of Holt, and they're like they have black tongues and they're smaller than the average human, and they might have their ears are slightly pointed. Essentially, there's like say that maybe they're descended from elves, which no longer exist in the world. And there's a lot of cool stuff with that. The world building is very interesting, but the world building isn't like completely at the forefront. It's more of just the mission they're on and all the characters and the writing. But like essentially, it's told from the viewpoint. Essentially, Kinch is kind of narrating it like it's mostly like in the present, but then sometimes he'll like as a narrator he'll break in and comment on something that's happening. And I really love the writing of it. It works really well, and like the action is I enjoy the action, but I think the best part is the writing and the characters. I love that, like so many times when they have the thief, like they said before about how he loves money, but also like he's not afraid to just kill people. You know, he doesn't like it, but like so many times in the fantasy book or any sort of book, like if they have a job that's unsavory, it'll only a means to an end, you know. But in this, like randomly they'll have at one point there's like a journey on a ship, which a lot of times is kind of stupid when a book goes at like have this at the side when they have to go in the ship somewhere. But this is really interesting. But they have some great stuff with like a kraken. Essentially, they're on like a whaling ship. It's the only one they're able to find, and there's some great stuff with it. And there's also some great stuff because one of the not the co-captain, or I forget the term for it, is on the ship is Mock Nal Brannick, and that's someone from his hometown that may not have been happy that Kinch is a draft dodger, you know. So there's a lot of interesting stuff there. But essentially, after some shit goes down, and there's a time when like maybe some people on the ship might have betrayed them a little bit, and he's just like, and they're all kind of indisposed, but he's the only one that's kind of aware, and he essentially just goes and just kills the guy. It's like what that betrayed him is like. And it shivs him a bunch with his rondel dagger, and then like Galva wakes up and looks at him like, "Oh, did you kill him?" Like, "Yeah." Like, "Oh, okay." You know, like she doesn't mind too much because she's a handmaiden of death. But it's like it's a couple times like that where like he just does things that like he's not evil, but it's just that's he's not a good guy necessarily. He's okay with doing some dirty things and doing the unpleasant things, and I kind of love that. But I have to come back to the writing because it is such a well-written book, and it's really like there'll be bits of poetry because like the Galts are kind of like known as a poetic kind of that's kind of what their culture is known as, for poets. They breed poets and magicians and sorcerers essentially, maybe because of the history of the Elvish in them. But they and they have songs and stuff, and they have bits of that. Like, it reminds me of a little bit, like Patrick Rothfuss a little bit. It's not as emotional as Patrick Rothfuss's books, but it definitely has a similar feel that a lot of times in fantasy, the writing is just a means to an end. The prose is that's really it's mainly meant you want to get to the story and the characters, and it's all just a means to an end. They're trying to get. The writing gets you from spot to spot. They don't focus as much on turning a good phrase or having interesting, more literature-esque. But to drive that point, I just want to read one passage. I just caught my eye, and I reread multiple times in this. And essentially, it's just after one point in the adventure, they got to break in the city, and he decides that he wants before they go on the ship. Kinch decides he wants to go pick some pockets, cut some purse strings, because they're having a public hanging, and that's a perfect time when people are distracted. And he doesn't even really need the money; he just wants some more money, and he's doing this. And then he knows one of the people that's being hung is a bard that wrote a nasty song about the king, and is about to be hung for it. And this passage is so interesting. It stuck out to me. I decided to read a little passage from the book to show you what I'm talking about with how the writing is so good. And so this is essentially the king and the queen are watching the hanging, and the Kinch is looking at the diadem on the queen and also thinking about what she'd be like to bang. And then he's thinking that, like, what it says. Okay, it occurred to me that I'd be hanged myself if I said half of that out loud. And I hoped the poor lass in the gallows at least got a good long laugh for the verse that cost her neck a stretch. What a fabulous kingdom the mind is, and you the emperor of all of it. You can bed the duke's wife and have the duke strangled in your mind. A crippled man can think himself a dancer, and an idiot can fool himself wise. The day a magicier peeks into the thoughts of commoners for some sin-scunned duke or king will be a bad day. Those with calloused hands will rise on that day, for a man will only toil in a mine so long as he can dream of sunny fields, and he will only kneel for a tyrant if he can secretly cut the tyrant's throat in the closed theater of his bowed head. And I kind of love that. It's like, it's so interesting take on it, and I love the idea, especially right after that. You see a person that he fought and got away, essentially, is also being hung. And at that moment, they kind of she sees him in the crowd, and they lock eyes, and they kind of like say hi. And then as he's doing it in her honor, he uses his foot to steal some like bangle or something, and someone had near him, to say that that's like how in your honor, essentially, he's stealing this. And I love that characterization. Like, it's so interesting and so different. And I love that. And I love that there's a relationship forms between Kinch and Norgal, and they kind of become moon wife and husband, because like I guess in their culture they have a thing where, like, in times of stress, because I mean in the Goblin Wars you may not live that long, but like they'll say that like there's hardly any men between the ages of 30 and 60 because they're all dead. So that so there's this thing where you'll marry and you'll be exclusive to each other for a month, for the length of a moon, and the relationship is really interesting and different, and they do a lot of cool things with it. And then there's a lot of stuff too, like essentially their main mission, although there's a lot of other stops along the way, is that they want to save this queen whose country has been invaded by giants. And like the king was killed, but the queen is in hiding, and that's like she was previously the princess of Galva's nation of Espancia, and like she essentially like this Miria, the Mad Infanta, like her uncle essentially killed the king and the queen and everyone else, but then didn't kill her because she pretended to be insane. So instead, he used her to form a relationship with a different country by marrying her off. But then now, like, Galva wants to try to put her back on the throne of her country. But there's, like, in this other country she's in, they kicked out the Guild of Thieves. So the Guild of Thieves aren't happy about that. So maybe, and they have Kinch following her, and maybe they also have... And this cat, this bully boy, this blind cat he finds, which may hold an assassin in its belly. It's some really cool stuff. Like magic is all like, it's really interesting because like they have like magical tattoos, or like things that you use once, and it's a lot of interesting stuff. And I love that too. I even talk about like one of the things that this world is so different because, like in part of like the second Goblin war. Like essentially they poisoned all the horses because the cavalry was giving them a big advantage of the humans against the goblins. and essentially almost all the horses in this world are dead, all the stallions. Like there are still a couple of mares, and there's so many beautiful moments in that like shine in this book. Because at one point they just randomly meet this queen that's riding with a bunch of soldiers trying to chase down this beast that's kind of like a minotaur essentially, but like and this queen, she has one of the few horses that are still alive and able to carry someone. It's an old mare, but it's still still able to carry the queen, and like she allows them to come and Kinch, like he writes about how just being in the presence of the horse flesh and like the sweat and the smell of the horse. Like I feel like, I don't know if Christopher Buehlman I don't know if he loves horses, but it feels emotional, you know. And then even she lets Galva pet the horse and give it some treats, and it's like such an important moment, but it's a moment that doesn't really mean anything to the story. Like the book is just full of these moments, and I really appreciate it. Like everything about this book, there's so many interesting things. Like even at one point, like a couple times there's like a towers game he does. With Kinch, like he has like a special ability. Essentially, he can feel luck in him, like flowing through a river, and he knows when his luck is running high, and he knows when it's running low. And when it's running high, he'll win at every game of cards he'll play. And running low, he may trip on a crack and break his nose. You know, and he also has the ability, he can read anything written, no matter what language it is. But like, if somebody finds something like that's really valuable, but also dangerous, because the Takers Guild has traps set up, where he mentions one time that he saw a sign that said that first beer is free, just tell the bartender. And then he was about to do it, but then realized, wait, I don't recognize that language. That looks weird. So it was traps set up to find people like him. But there's also, it's so interesting too. But with the Towers card game, it's he essentially created the entire card game. He talks about at the end, he had play testers to try to make this game. Essentially, it's just for this scene where he's trying to figure out what happened to the queen that they're looking for at a certain point. And he plays the card game with this guy, and it's interesting. You know, he spent so much time on this small part of the book, and I love that about the author. Like there's even some great stuff where I feel like it's trying to do something different than you would normally expect from a fantasy book. Like he's trying to play on the tropes, because Kinch is not the chosen one, you know. And there's even some plays at a certain point they meet Fulvir, who was one of the greatest sorcerer in the world and helped them win the last Goblin War by creating the werebeast. And he's in their country there, and they're really proudful about lying. Lying is kind of like an art to them. And but he takes it to an upper level where he's kind of lying about everything, this sorcerer. But he's at a certain point he's you know, I'm your dad. And he's Kinch is huh? And it's is he lying? Is he telling the truth? It's well, my parents did get married, and I was born 4 months after. So I mean, it's possible. My mother was beautiful when she was young. He could have been traveling through and banged my mom, and it doesn't mean anything to the story. You know, other fantasy stories, that'd be the big moment you find out that you're the heir to the sorcerer, and you're important, and you're the chosen one. And this is oh yeah, I probably did. It's don't you know, oh, what do I care about my bodily fluids? Do I care about the shit I throw in a can? It's the same for all the women I have sex with. It's so weird and interesting and different, and there's so many moments you could pull from this book that you talk about, and that are just so interesting and beautiful and weird and creepy and different. And I would highly recommend this book. You know, especially if you're a fan of fantasy or if you're looking for something different. It's a little dark, but I never thought it was too dark. It never got too much into the grim dark aspect of that subgenre. Like I really think, even if you're not usually a fan of fantasy, I think this would be something to try, because it's an excellent book. I mean, the Blacktongue Thief. Christopher Buehlman did an amazing job on it. I think he's actually, this is his first fantasy book. I think he's written horror before, but like he's always been a fan of fantasy, and this is his first time writing fantasy. And I loved it, and I'm really looking forward to the rest of the series. Like, this is a relatively self-contained book. Like, it has a really strong beginning, middle, and end, but there definitely is more of a story they could tell in the future. And I'll be here for it. I probably give like a 10 out of 10. I love this book. So thanks for watching. If you want to see any more of me, you can subscribe down below. Thanks.